Sports, a bridge that brings people together. And here in the Commonwealth, it's no different. From the gridiron to the hardwood and beyond, we all have a team we love to talk about. Now for the teams you care about, here's Heartland Sports Live with Trevor Rice.
And welcome into another Heartland Sports Live on 106.1 ESPN Radio 1400 AM. We are also live streaming this afternoon on ESPN Radio 1061.com. You can go back and check out every Heartland Sports Live on the Apple Podcast link on my Twitter account at Radio Trevor Rice. And it's very simple. Just go into my Twitter account. You will see the link on the left side. Well, a lot to talk about out of the weekend. Talking football here, of course. So as the weeks go by, we'll talk a little more about some college basketball during this show. But since I'm limited to an hour, we got to talk some high school football playoffs this hour. College football is still going on as we're in the final weeks of the regular season, and NFL action yesterday with the Tennessee Titans squeaking by the Kansas City Chiefs in a thriller. Man, that was one heck of a ball game there, 35-32. We'll talk about that a little bit later on, as well as I have Ryan Lemond of Kentucky Sports Radio joining me this hour here on Heartland Sports Live, and he'll be joining me in, why don't we do that the next segment, and then I will have, in the final segment today, I will have Randy Lee of the Western Kentucky Hilltoppers to talk about that. What was a tremendous game out of the Hilltoppers, winning big over Arkansas. In fact, the Arkansas fan base may have been chanting to fire their head football coach when their team went into the half down 35-7 to the Hilltoppers, who are now bowl eligible, picking up their sixth victory of the season. And man, they get a win at home against Army earlier this year, and now a solid victory in a tough atmosphere over there in Fayetteville. Even though the team has not been living up to what I think the fan base expects them to over there in Arkansas. Of course, you got that whole storyline. The quarterback currently for Western Kentucky coming from Arkansas, so we'll talk about that story with Randy Lee coming up later in the show as well with Ty's story. Trevor Rice with you, though. Let's talk about some high school football. Of course, our Blandon Bird Whistle High School football game of the week on Friday night was Elizabethtown hosting Thomas Nelson, and Bobby and I kind of knew, Bobby Thompson, my broadcast partner, we kind of knew going into that game it was going to be a tall order for the Generals to come out on top in that one, considering the fact you look at the regular season matchup back on September 20th between those two programs, not even close, 54-0, and just like that game Friday night, not any different, except 5 points different, if you want to be technical here. 49-0, a big win for Elizabethtown Friday night, as we just go ahead and look at some of their stats. Clay Games didn't have to do much, 4 of 6 through the air, 152 yards passing, had an 81-yard bomb to LaVey Grimes that pretty much, that was basically the dagger for me in that first half, but E-Town will continue to pour it on from that point. You could just tell that Thomas Nelson was not even in the same bracket as what Elizabethtown is right now when it comes to how competitive the team is and just the overall skill gap. You could just clearly see it in the first few minutes of that ball game Friday night. 2 touchdowns for Clay Games on Friday night. Joseph Becker only had to rush for 4 times, had 132 yards on the ground, 2 touchdowns, and Cameron McNeil having 4 rushes as well, 71 yards, had a score in there. Charles Evans there in the second half had 39 yards in total off of 4 carries and 1 touchdown Friday night, and then Ryder Gregory getting in on the action as well with 1 touchdown on the night. So you look at all of that. He didn't necessarily play well at the quarterback position, but he did have that 1 touchdown. Ryder Gregory did. Overall, Elizabethtown taking care of business, forcing turnovers. You could continue to talk about this game, but I think at the end of the day, Elizabethtown just a far superior team to what Thomas Nelson was fielding, and I do not like the idea of having the 1s and the 4s go at it from the same district. It's just a lot of the games turn out to be not competitive, and to be quite frank, they don't even belong on the field. If you go 1-9 in the regular season, you just don't belong in the postseason. This is not a thing where participation trophies belong. The best teams need to be in the postseason, and that's it. Final. I'm sorry. That's just how I feel about it. But 49-0, the A-Town Panthers winning. Other games going on Friday night. Of course, a couple of area teams in the Meade County Greenway visiting the Central Hardin Bruins over in Cecilia Friday night, as it was the Bruins holding on to a 42-30 victory over Meade County. I watched the closing moments of that, saw Meade County struck late, and then an onside kick attempt. It was Central Hardin recovering and just holding on from there. Going to victory formation, and the Bruins, who had lost 2 straight there to wrap up the 2019 regular season, losing to North Hardin and then to South Oldham in back-to-back weeks, losing 43-7 to South Oldham, only 7 points through 8 quarters of play. Turned it around Friday night and beat Meade County by a dozen, 42-30, and now they turn their attention to this next team we're going to talk about in the North Hardin Trojans, who defensively, Barron County just did not have a chance in that one to move the football, as there were 6 turnovers in that game, 6 interceptions, I should say in total, from North Hardin Friday night, with Jordan Lovett, who's being looked at a couple of D1 schools right now, Ball State being one of them, had 4 interceptions in that game. Ian Patry had 1 interception in that game, and then 1 INT to the credit of Devontae Jordan Lamafa, number 9, as well as just 6 turnovers. And man, this North Hardin defense is on a roll right now. Can anybody penetrate this defense and force them into some errors? Because to be quite frank, this North Hardin defense has been the strong suit of this North Hardin team throughout the regular season and now the first weekend of the postseason. And I don't know. I don't know how the opposing team's offenses can fare against this. We'll see if Central Hardin can maybe rack up something this Friday night, which is going to be our Blandon Birdwhistle High School football game of the week. North Hardin and Central Hardin in a rematch from a couple of weeks ago, where we saw a 7-0 ball game, which featured Central Hardin. Just they struggled to move the football, even though they did a couple of times. It was just some turnovers, and we're talking about turnovers here with North Hardin. They forced a couple deep inside of their own territory, punching the ball out at one point, as Central Hardin had a couple of chances to strike in that game a few weeks ago. Unfortunately, just could never get across the goal line before giving the ball back to North Hardin, as the defense held on, and the offense did just enough to win that game 7-0. And I would expect a few more points. Of course, you go back to that game. It was a wet game. It was kind of it was not, the conditions were not good enough to allow these offenses to fully prepare or fully see what we could have seen in that game. And so when you look at the Central Hardin offense, you look at the North Hardin offense, which Manny Wimberly on Friday night did not have the biggest of nights, only going 9 of 24 for 161 yards and 1 touchdown. I think whoever can establish the running game early, we're going to see some success. Is going to see some success in that game, just for the fact that I think you're going to have some alleys open for the passing game to develop, and you don't want to get down 2 scores in that game. Otherwise, the chances of coming back are pretty slim, just because I feel like that both of these teams are going to play a very tight, competitive game. The battle's going to come down to the trenches once again, and of course, it's the old cliche, the battle in the trenches. Well, it is going to come down to this, because it did come to that battle a couple of weeks ago when these two teams met, and it was North Hardin winning on a couple of occasions. And even though Central Hardin did move the football, like I said, a couple of times in that ball game, you still felt like the defense of North Hardin was controlling that game. Now let's see if Central Hardin, who's been, I have to believe that this past week may have been looking ahead to this game, because they knew they were going to be in a rematch slightly with that North Hardin team. And there's going to be a big crowd for this game. It's going to be a big playoff environment, just like it was a few weeks ago in Cecilia. This time the game's being played in Radcliffe, and I have a feeling the crowd's going to show up from Cecilia, and of course Radcliffe's going to show up just like they did a few weeks ago. And it's going to be a big-time environment, and both teams, of course, North Hardin, they're wanting to keep this undefeated streak alive, plus continue on there in the playoffs. The end goal for both of these teams is a championship, obviously, but I think North Hardin, has had a chip on their shoulders, especially last year with this defensive unit, who immediately after they lost in the postseason a year ago went to their head football coach and said, "Coach, open up the not the locker room, but the weight room. Let us in. We're ready to go. We're getting better right now, and this next season is going to, there's no excuses." And they went in and started training and getting up physically prepared for this season, and it's shown on the football field just for the fact that they have come out and punched every team that they've faced this year in the mouth. And it's been tough for opposing team offenses who may have had some success throughout the season. Well, when they meet this North Hardin team, I don't think they're necessarily expecting a defense to come out and just basically just bowl over them there at the line of scrimmage. And really, if you get in a one-on-one situation, you think you may have the advantage there? Not necessarily. They could bring a safety over to help out, or just the fact they're good at one-on-one coverage this year. Jordan Lovett has been a monster in the secondary for North Hardin this season, so I would expect North Hardin and Central Hardin to give us one heck of a thriller again, and I would expect more points in this game this time around. I think the weather impacted the offensive play slightly a few weeks ago with the precipitation on the ball, and you just couldn't see the full effectiveness of these two offenses, and I think we're going to see a change in the way that this next game is going to be called this Friday night at 7:30 p.m. between North and Central, between just a great matchup of coaches. Tim Mattingly for Central Hardin, Brent Thompson, of course, who's been coaching up this defense, and Manny Wimberly. I have a feeling he's going to step up, because I have a feeling Chase Elmore is going to come into this game with a much different mindset, and I wouldn't be surprised if we possibly see more Gavin George. So if North Hardin's going one-on-one coverage with him, look out, because a deep ball, a jump ball down the near or far sideline could be what we're talking about when it's all said and done. Just the fact that North Hardin was not respecting that deep threat of Gavin George. And who else can step up on that Central Hardin offense? Of course, we expect Deonka Wilkerson to get his fair share of carries Friday night. Who else is going to step up? Because Kyler Lee, you give him the football, he's ready to just go at you. He doesn't even hide the fact that he's willing to take on a hit. But somebody else is going to have to step up, maybe even in the passing game in that ball game Friday night, to possibly see Central come out on top, and it's going to be fun for us to watch. Once again, 7:30 p.m. is the kickoff. North Hardin and Central Hardin, our Blandon Birdwhistle High School football game of the week. And you'll be able to catch it right here on 106.1 ESPN Radio, 1400 on the AM side, and we will live stream it all on ESPN Radio 1061.com. In fact, I need to go back, because it is not going to be on ESPN Radio. I just forgot. It's going to be the Hilltoppers basketball team in action. So I need to go back and restate that the game is going to be on 99.3. That's KMO Country 99.3. And not 106.1 ESPN. I have to correct myself, because I forgot the Hilltoppers basketball is on this Friday. So North Hardin, Central Hardin will actually be on KMO Country 99.3. And we'll still live stream the game on ESPN Radio 1061.com. And I'll even post up the information on our Twitter account and our Facebook account, which you can like us at ESPN Radio 1061 on Twitter. And we've been slowly growing that page on there. 106.1 ESPN Radio. You can like us on Facebook as well. So that's a few of the area matchups that we were looking at there. Let's go to 4A real quick, as the John Hardin Bulldogs, they lost by 14 to Spencer County in the regular season. John Hardin was not going to be denied on Friday night, as they came out and pretty much took it to Spencer County early. As we just go ahead and look at that final score one more time, as it was 35-21, John Hardin defeating Spencer County. Now they'll be in an away game this week against Moore, as we just look at those stats real quick. Caden Wilson went 7 of 15, 101 yards, had 2 touchdowns on Friday night. Keandre Strand had 17 carries for $133, so a good job of him and a solid job of the offensive line to open up some running lanes for their backs. 2 touchdowns out of Strand, as he was getting a workload on Friday night. And then Caden Wilson had 6 carries as well on the ground for 53 yards. The other guy having a touchdown was Dominic Hodges, who had 9 carries for 43 yards and 1 score on Friday night, as the John Hardin Bulldogs, they ignored the fact, and I think if you were to ask Coach Ingstrand and that ball club, do you feel like you should have beaten Spencer County there in that first meeting earlier in the season? They'll tell you yes, just for the fact that they felt like there was a few plays in that game that they just let it go. And then they came back Friday night, and they proved to everybody that, well, they are better than Spencer County, and they were on Friday night, winning 35-21. So congratulations to the John Hardin Bulldogs. Once again, they will advance and take on more this week at 7:30 p.m. That will be Friday night, and an away game for the John Hardin Bulldogs. Real quick, let's check out Fort Knox, as you knew it was going to be a tough one, as they fell Friday night, unfortunately. 7 victories, though, and I saw this tweet out, and I retweeted it on our Twitter account at ESPN Radio 1061. You can follow us on there. 7 victories in 2 seasons had not been done in a long time at Fort Knox, so I got to give these seniors who went out only 3 wins on the season, but that's a big deal for a Fort Knox program that has been looking for a turnaround for years, and I feel like these kids set the tone. They have changed the mindset of that Fort Knox Eagles football program, and they're starting to get more participation going forward from the kids in that school. You're starting to see more and more kids go out, as they ended up losing 49-7 to Holy Cross out of Louisville, ending their season as they were on the road. You know it was going to be a tough challenge. They just met up with Holy Cross a few weeks ago and lost 54-6. So, plus, they were in a tough district. In fact, I had seen that Campbellsville actually lost as well to Bethlehem. So, you get all of those programs mixed in. That is one of the toughest districts in all of high school football here in the state of Kentucky. So, for them to be kind of in that, thrown into that mess, into that fire, that's a tough task to try to ask those boys to come out and try to win against some of that competition, just for the fact that they're fielding some of the best teams in the state right now. So that's a kind of a look at what's going on here. Elizabethtown, I forgot to mention, they will be at home this Friday night. They'll be taking on Bardstown, as Bardstown took care of LaRue County on Friday night by the score of 47-0. Earlier this season, they had actually defeated LaRue County by the score of 42-0. So it's going to be a rematch from a few weeks ago, as it was Elizabethtown winning 20-14 in overtime against Bardstown. They're going to have a rematch this Friday night in E-Town at Elizabethtown High School. 7:30 p.m. will be the kickoff for you wanting to go see some 3A competition with the Elizabethtown Panthers and Bardstown Tigers. The Battle of the Cats, Friday night. Well, that's a look at all the high school football action. Well, of course, this weekend, this Friday, North Hardin, Central Hardin, 7:30 p.m. kickoff on KMO Country 99.3. Listen to it on there and online, ESPNRadio1061.com. Should be a thriller once again. I'm expecting a huge crowd, and it's going to be a tough battle for both of those two clubs, as both of them want to keep this streak alive. They both feel that they can win a championship this season, and the way they've presented themselves on the field, I would not doubt a championship possibly being brought from the 6A classification here in Hardin County this season, or at least a trip to the championship game, that is. Trevor Rice with you. I still have Ryan Lemond coming up here from Kentucky Sports Radio. You can hear those guys 10 until noon. Of course, you know the whole story with Matt Jones last week. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about the Wildcats basketball program and what happened on Saturday against Tennessee. I'll have Ryan Lemond coming up here in just a few minutes. And then a little bit later on, Randy Lee of the Western Kentucky Hilltoppers will be joining me. And we're going to talk about the Hilltoppers' big victory as they headed west to Fayetteville, Arkansas to take on the Arkansas Razorbacks. We'll recap that game and more when we continue, with Ryan Lemond next. And then we'll talk about the Hilltoppers later. It's Heartland Sports Live on 106.1 ESPN Radio. Back with more after this.
One more time.
Welcome back into Heartland Sports Live on 106.1 ESPN Radio, 1400 AM, and we are once again live streaming on ESPN Radio 1061.com. Joining me on the phone line right now is KSR's Ryan Lemond, who is now, do I call you the host of KSR now that Matt is no longer in that seat?
I guess I am the temporary host Well, we are sans Matt Jones for the time being. Yes, I guess so. Yeah, I got the temporary bump for the moment.
Do we still have the hashtag movement going on from last week?
Oh.
Free Matt Jones.
Oh yeah, hashtag Free Matt Jones. We got the hashtag going. We got T-shirts made. There's a billboard on Nicholasville Road. Tom Hart is shouting him out during the UK broadcast. So it is definitely full force.
Yeah, and I mean, just talk about that whole situation real quick. We'll keep it brief here because I know you guys are probably you've been talking about it enough. But I mean, what has that been like for you guys sitting there doing the show and just the outpouring of support from the fan base?
Well, it stinks to have to do it without him. Point one is because he's the guy that started all this. He's the creator of all this, and he's really good at what he does, and he's the reason the show has been so successful. So with that part of it stinks. I enjoy doing the show with him, and it kind of stinks not doing it with him. But with that said, the outpouring of support from fans, the hashtag movement, it was number one in trending in the United States on Thursday after all that happened. All that happened on Wednesday afternoon last week, and on Thursday it was the number one trending in the United States. I mean, it was trending number 27 in the world at that moment. I mean, that's crazy to think of that. So, and he was really humbled and touched by it. I mean, it takes a lot to really kind of, you could tell when it touches him like that, but he was truly humbled and touched by that the fans reacted the way they did on Thursday with that. Like, we started it during our second block of our show, so at about 10:15, 10:20, and within less than an hour and a half, it was trending number one. So that just tells you what people think about him and think about our show, that they were that moved to get that going, and it's still continuing even today. 5 days later.
How many shows? How many shows is he involved in that you're kind of having to fill now? Because I've heard you on multiple shows now.
Well, obviously KSR, the Daily Show, and then we do the UK football pregame show, and we do the UK basketball pregame show. That's the shows that we all do together. But he himself also does UK football postgame and UK basketball postgame. So those are the two shows that I now have to do by myself to fill in for him. So I guess five shows KSR, 2 pregame and 2 postgame that now I have to do in his absence. So this past weekend was tough because football played on Saturday and basketball played on Friday, and there's another basketball game tomorrow.
On top of your everyday regular job as it is in real estate.
I'm a realtor. I'm showing houses, and my son plays pretty much 4 days a week in basketball, and plus, I'm playing husband. Just doing all the juggling, all the other stuff.
So Mitch has not only impacted one life, but he's impacted yours as well.
Mitch, please. Yeah, the name of that book is Mitch, please. I can't wait to talk to that guy. Yeah, thanks for interfering with my life, Mitch McConnell.
Ryan Lemon of Kentucky Sports Radio joining us here on Heartland Sports Live. Well, a loss to Tennessee on Saturday, Ryan, had to make you feel like garbage going into Sunday. What was that post-game show like for you? And I heard you guys talking about it today. I mean, was there kind of somebody on the Tennessee side kind of feeding some information?
Well, that kind of broke during our show today that apparently there's a former UK grad assistant that is now on the Tennessee staff that this is stuff that we're finding out, that knows the Kentucky signals, that during the second quarter kind of realized, you know what, they haven't changed their signals from when I was there. And we've not been told otherwise that Kentucky didn't change their signals enough where he knew the plays that were being called. And the timeline kind of checks out, but they kind of figured out what was going on. So I don't know. I mean, Shannon Dawson, when he left Kentucky and went to Southern Miss, he flat out said it. Like, hey, man, they didn't change their signals, and we knew what they were going to run. And now here's a second guy who was saying it, like, So, I don't know. We don't have 100% confirmation, but there is a guy on the Tennessee staff that was a grad assistant at Kentucky last year, and that's just kind of what we're learning.
Well, it did seem like the Tennessee's figured something out because the first and second half was a little bit different from each other, just for the fact that Kentucky just couldn't get anything going from basically the second quarter on, right?
Yeah. And, I don't blame that guy. I mean, he now works for Tennessee. And if Kentucky's using the same signals that when he was there, I would have done the same thing. I would have told my coaches, hey, man, I know what play they're running because I know their signals. I would have done the exact same thing. If anything, you blame Kentucky for not mixing it up and changing their signals a little bit. That's probably most staffs should do.
So I guess what are the feelings now with the fan base after that loss to Tennessee, a game where I feel like maybe you guys felt like you could win that game being at home?
Oh, should have won it. Yeah, should have won that game. You jump out. You have that first opening drive of the game where you ran, 17 plays, had the ball for, 11 minutes or something like that. You ran it right down their throat, and you scored. And then they give you a gift. You block their punt, and you score again. You're up 13-0 at home, and you ended up having time of possession 42 of the 60 minutes of the game. You rushed for over 300 yards, and you're telling me you lost that football game at home to your rival? Come on, man. That shouldn't happen. There's no way Kentucky should have lost that football game. And, oh, by the way, you got beat again by a backup quarterback. I don't know what the curse of Kentucky football is of losing to a backup quarterback and the curse of Kentucky football losing to freaking Tennessee. I'm just sick and tired of the same story over and over and over of losing to Tennessee and losing to a backup quarterback and having a lead in the fourth quarter and figuring out a way to lose the football game. It's just the same story I've seen over and over and over as a Kentucky football fan, and we saw it again Saturday night, Trevor.
I feel like I'm making you more mad the longer this conversation goes. First we start with Mitch, now we're talking Tennessee. I feel like I'm getting an angry Ryan Lemon right now.
You are, man, and that post-game show Saturday night, I opened it up with an epic rant where I just unleashed. Because I've seen this story too many times, man. I've seen Lucy pull the football from Charlie Brown too many times when it comes to Kentucky football, and I saw it again Saturday night, and I've seen it with Tennessee too many times. I've seen Mark Hayes get stopped at the goal line. I've seen Lona Sieber miss the field goal. I've seen Joker Phillips not give the ball to Randall Cobb. All these games when we lose to Tennessee, and now it happened again. Trevor, they had it first and goal from the 6 and a chance to win the football game on that last possession. First and goal from the 6, and then third and goal from the 1. You had the ball on the 1-yard line, and you can't score? Come on, man. That's Kentucky's curse when it comes to playing Tennessee for some reason.
Ryan Lemon of Kentucky Sports Radio joining us here on Heartland Sports Live. What's the rest of the season look like for Kentucky football? Does this team make a bowl?
Oh, yeah. Thankfully they do. Just the scheduling gods have smiled on them this year. They go to Vanderbilt this weekend. Vanderbilt's a train wreck. They lost 56-0 to Florida last weekend. Even though it's on the road, if you don't beat Vanderbilt, well, then you got a lot more worse problems than not scoring on the 1-yard line to Tennessee. You win that one. Then you come home and you play UT Martin. I mean, that's a win. So there's your 6th win. And then you end the season with Louisville at home. I mean, that's your rival, and you're at home. I mean, you should win all 3 of those. So that's, believe it or not, that's 7 wins in a season where you not only lost your starting quarterback a game and a half in, you lost your backup quarterback a game and a half later. Your third-string quarterback got hurt before the season even started, and you got to play a wide receiver at quarterback the rest of the season. And you still got 7 wins, and you're still going to go to a decent bowl game. I mean, that's miraculous, really. But that's probably what they're going to look at and end up with.
Let's talk about Mark Stoops because his name has been one of those that's been tossed around for a coaching vacancy elsewhere that maybe he might be able to fill that void. Do you feel like Mark Stoops stays, or is he looking at legitimately going somewhere?
Well, I think he's definitely on Florida State's list, and he should be on Florida State's list. I think Florida State's probably going to try to hit a home run first because they need to. The Willie Taggart experiment didn't work. He was there, Billy Gillespie. They went out, hired they thought was a young gun go-getter, and it didn't work. So maybe they need to hire a home run. Are they going to try to hire Mark's brother, Bob Stoops? Are they going to try to hire the dude up at Iowa State? And if they don't get it, Mark Stoops may be their third, fourth, fifth choice, but he's on their list. There's no doubt about it. Now, if Kentucky stumbles to 6-6, maybe he's going to move farther down the list, but he's on their list. He was on their staff when they won that national championship, but he's got good ties down there in Tallahassee and Florida State, so that's why he's going to be on the list. Now, will he take the job? Yes. I think if they offer it to him, he's going to take it, and all Kentucky fans need to pat him on the back, congratulate him, and thank him for what he did here, and wish him the best. I mean, it is Florida State. So we need to realize we are still who we are. We ain't Florida State quite yet.
Yeah, but on that same note, he can, with a few more years and maybe the right class coming in, he could get Kentucky to where it's being recognized on a national stage. I mean, last year he did.
That's true. But, Florida State won a national championship, 6 years ago, and Kentucky still hasn't even won the SEC East title yet. I mean, I still try to put it in perspective for Kentucky fans' eyes. Florida State's won, 3 national titles and won runner-up, 3 other times, and we haven't even played in the SEC Conference Championship game. We haven't even won the SEC East title yet. So, I mean, we still got a long way to go before we can get to Florida State status yet, where he can go and win a national title. Win a national title. We ain't even got the SEC East title.
Yeah, but let's look at it here. You guys have had the defense here recently to compete with some of the best. Do you feel like you're only missing maybe 1 or 2 key players offensively to make that thing happen?
To win the East, you definitely, absolutely. I think we can definitely get to the point where we can compete for the SEC East, but I think we're still a long way away from beating what I saw LSU and Alabama playing on Saturday and getting up to that level. I think that's still another level that we're not quite there yet.
Ryan Lemon of Kentucky Sports Radio joining us here on Heartland Sports Live. Let's talk basketball for a minute real quick, Ryan. How are you feeling after that Michigan State win last week? Is this Kentucky team for real?
I think they are for real. I mean, what I saw to beat number 1 Michigan State, a veteran team, they were number 1 for a reason. I mean, they had just about everybody back, veteran team, experienced team, a real good team that I thought I predicted them to lose. I didn't think they were even going to win the game. And for them to not only win, but to pretty much dominate the game, to go up, and then Michigan State would make a run, and then boom, Kentucky would counterpunch. Not one time did Kentucky give up that lead in the second half when Michigan State would try to make run after run after run, like you knew they would. A good, veteran, experienced team like that, you knew they were going to make a run, and they did several times. And Kentucky not one time take the knockout punch and wilt. That showed me something. That showed me a lot of character and toughness from a young Kentucky team. And then to come out against EKU and not show any, weren't flat or, before themselves. They didn't let EKU score until the 13-minute mark. 7 minutes into the game, EKU still had a 0. So, they weren't resting on the fact that they just beat the number 1 team in the country. They still came out and played sharp, tough, defense back, good defense. And I think that's the whole key to this basketball team is that they are so good defensively, really good on the perimeter. And if Nick Richards can be that good rim protector that we've seen so far, this is a basketball team, Trevor, that can go a long way. And I'm talking Final Four, national championship caliber team. And the guards are so good. If Nick Richards can be the guy we've seen so far, they can go a long, long way.
Ryan Lemon of KSR joining us here on Heartland Sports Live. Ryan, it's always fun catching up with you, and I look forward to talking to you again real soon. Hopefully Kentucky can get these 2 wins out of the way, get bowl eligibility, and then basketball season is going to be in full swing. That's all we're going to be talking about here in the coming weeks.
You can call me anytime. Let's just hope next time it's not after a stinking loss to Tennessee football. I'm tired of talking about losing to Tennessee in football.
Hashtag free Matt Jones.
Hashtag free Matt Jones. I'll get you a shirt, Trevor.
KSR every weekday, Monday through Friday, 10 until noon. Ryan Lemon, now the host for the time being of KSR.
Temporary host. Yeah, just the fill-in guy doing a little long relief out of the bullpen right now.
And doing like 4 other shows in the process as well. Ryan, I appreciate your time. Good talking to you. And I guess go Cats.
All right, buddy. Talk to you soon.
Ryan Lemon there. This hour is presented by CC Power Sports off exit 121, just south of the Snyder and Brooks Road, I-65, just off of I-65. Get your hands on a new or pre-owned Suzuki ATV, motorcycle, or scooter while the deals are hot. That's CC Power Sports, a short drive up I-65 from us here in E-Town in Shepherdsville. On the way, Randy Lee will be on the phone line joining me in the next segment. We're going to talk about the Hilltoppers' big victory on Saturday over Arkansas in Fayetteville. It's Heartland Sports Live on 106.1 ESPN Radio.
Hello again, everybody. I'm Mike Keith, voice of the Tennessee Titans, and you're listening to Heartland Sports Live with Trevor Rice on 106.1 ESPN Radio.
Glorious. No, I won't give in till I'm victorious.
And welcome back into Heartland Sports Live on 106.1 ESPN Radio, 1400 AM. We're also live streaming on ESPN Radio 1061.com. Trevor Rice said, and joining me right now on the phone line is Randy Lee, the voice of the Western Kentucky Hilltoppers, coming back with smiles as we were talking about it just off the air here, Randy. I'm going to say pounded because that's exactly what Western Kentucky did to Arkansas on Saturday. In fact, so bad that the crowd was chanting for their coach to be fired, and then that came to reality. We found out yesterday. So I welcome you, Randy. A big win for the Hilltoppers on Saturday as they picked up 2 solid victories this season, Army and now Arkansas.
Trev, it was an outstanding performance. They went into that game only as 1-point underdogs, which surprised me a little bit, I thought, because even though Arkansas was struggling, you're on the road against an SEC opponent. I thought maybe the point spread would be 6 or along that line, but that was not the case. And really, from the very outset of the game, WKU just controlled the line of scrimmage. They played very well in their skill positions. Ty Story went back home to the university he always wanted to play at and did play at for 4 years and had a great game. With the exception of 2 long Arkansas runs, which totaled 160 yards for the entire game, Arkansas only gained 180 additional yards in those other 52 plays. So that's how dominant the Hilltoppers were. They were up 35-7 at the half, up 38-7 after 3. Really took their foot off the gas pedal, and the score at 45-19, that was the final. The game really wasn't even that close. So they played great. Arkansas certainly is in the midst of a world of hurt right now in their football program, and the Tops went in there and took advantage of it. The year before, they went in, their basketball team went into Fayetteville and upset the Razorbacks in December, and they'll have an opportunity to play Arkansas again this year in basketball in December. Wouldn't it be a story to sweep those 3 games? Basically, the Hilltoppers were able to receive 2 basketball games out of Arkansas's request to have us come and play them once for football, and that no one would ever dreamed that the Hilltoppers would win all 3 meetings. Right now, 2 down with 2 wins and 1 more to go.
Most definitely. Randy Lee joining us here on Heartland Sports Live. How good do you think Ty Story is feeling on this Monday?
I can't imagine anyone feeling any better than Ty did. Ty, he started at Arkansas 9 games last year, and they had a bad year. They were 2-10, and that was the first year he played under Chad Morris. Chad Morris then goes out and signs up 2 grad transfers to come in and beat Ty out of the job, 1 from Texas A&M and 1 from SMU. The quarterback at SMU, that's where Chad Morris was at prior to coming to Arkansas, he broke all of SMU's passing records. So I think everyone assumed they would come in and just absolutely tear it up. Neither has done that. And in the game Saturday, Arkansas started a redshirt freshman Roy had played 3 games last year, but you don't lose your freshman. You don't lose a year to a redshirt unless you play more than 4. So they started him, Jerry Jones's grandson, and then they had a true freshman quarterback as their backup, and they combined to go 9 for 26. And Ty Storey threw for 213 and ran for 77 more and scored 3 touchdowns. So not only was it a win for WKU, but and before the game, the fans and ushers and policemen we were talking to outside the stadium waiting to get into the stadium. It was locked up until 2.5 hours prior to kickoff. They all, to a person, were just absolutely scared to death that Ty Storey would come back and beat them. And, it was a team effort, but Ty certainly played his role and was amazing.
Both Walker and Story did pretty well in the running attack on Saturday. 23 carries for Walker, 129 yards, had 1 touchdown, a couple of touchdowns rushing for Ty Story as well. Why were they so good at running the football on Saturday compared to some of the recent struggles maybe they've had during the regular season so far?
Well, I would say, the 2 previous games where they've not been able to run it well, Marshall and FAU are better than Arkansas. Arkansas, in their previous 6 SEC games, had allowed an average of 313 yards rushing against them. So this was a defense that has not been as good as WKU has faced in the last. Well, UAB's defense is better, Marshall's defense is better, FAU's defense is better. So those 3 conference games that the Hilltoppers have not had great success in running against, so those teams, especially defensively, are a lot better than Arkansas is.
Bowl eligible now, 6 wins on the year, still going for more, though, these Hilltoppers are. That's got to feel pretty good, right?
Yes, and I think they're going to need to win 1 more. I don't know. 6 could get them in. It all depends upon what happens in the remaining 3 weeks of the season. 2 more games for WKU, 3 for most of the other teams in the conference. 7 would certainly wrap it up. 6, you're hoping. 7, So they have a bye week. They'll have 2 weeks now to prepare for a really good Southern Miss team. That game is on the road, and then they'll come home to wrap it up for their last game of the season against MTSU. And, a 3-win team a year ago, they've already doubled the win total. You get to 7, that's an exceptional step up. You could get to 8, and that is, that is really a great accomplishment. But 2 more to go. Both games will be very difficult. But Southern Miss this past week just overwhelmed UAB 37-2. UAB came into that game with the best defense in Conference USA. So Southern Miss has it rolling right now.
How do you feel about Western Kentucky in those matchups, though, to wrap up the season in these last couple of games?
Well, they'll definitely be an underdog, probably 6 to 8 point underdog at Southern Miss. They will be favored against MTSU. The Blue Raiders right now have won 3 games, and they have 3 games left. So I'd like their chances certainly to be able to beat the Blue Raiders at home. I'd say the game at Southern Miss is 50-50. They'll have to play really well. They'll have to force turnovers. They were able to force a couple and actually scored a defensive touchdown in the Arkansas game. But it'll be a very big challenge to go to Southern Miss and have to win that game. But the key is WKU has 2 weeks to prepare for that game. Southern Miss plays this coming week. WKU does not. So they can put all their energy and effort and mindset for 2 weeks into getting ready for that game. So that'll be a big advantage for the Tops.
What is the difference from week 1 to where we are now in the season, Randy, with this team? Because this seems like a team that has transformed over the last several weeks, and their defense is at a whole different level from where they've been before.
Yeah, you always want your team to improve during the season. It doesn't always happen. This team certainly improved immeasurably after week 1. Defensively speaking, in that first game, they gave up over 400 yards passing, over 200 yards in the fourth quarter alone. They changed some things in the secondary, not really personnel in the secondary, but they were able to better understand, I think, what they had and made some changes and maybe played a little different kind of a defense in the secondary, protecting a couple of kids. And they've also, 6 weeks into the season, had Roger Cray rejoined the team after an injury. He had missed the first 5 or 6 games with a knee injury. He's their best corner, so they shored up that secondary. Defensive line, I thought, has played well all year long. The defensive ends have been fantastic. D'Angelo Malone will probably be the defensive player of the conference. He still leads all of college football's defensive linemen in total tackles. The other end, Juwan Jones, is very good as well. So, they have been, I think, except for the opener, they've been pretty darn good defensively, with the exception of maybe a quarter here and a quarter there of being a fantastic defense. I think they wore out a little bit 2 weeks ago at FAU. They were down 2 tackles in that game because of injuries. And I do think because maybe their lack of depth at that position, with playing with 2 fewer players, FAU was able to take control of that game late in the fourth quarter by running the ball right at that defensive tackle tandem that was in there at that point in time. But overall, it's been a fantastic defensive year for the Tops.
Randy Lee, the voice of the Hilltoppers, joining us here on Heartland Sports Live. Let's go to the basketball side of things, where the Hilltoppers have started off pretty strong. A couple of victories against lesser opponents, but you still got to like the way this team has come out and played, winning by double digits again over the weekend. So how are you feeling about this Hilltoppers basketball program right now?
Well, I think it's going to be one of the better offensive teams they've had in a while. They put up 97 on the Saturday against Austin Peay. They have the capability of being a better shooting team than the Tops have had in the past, with the addition of a couple of grad transfers. Of course, they have Charles Bassey in the middle. Austin Peay was concerned about containing Bassey, which opened up the perimeter for Cameron Justice to really tear him up. So it's a team that has the potential to be very good. I think the ultimate success of this team could be determined here in the next 10 to 12 days. They are still waiting to hear if the waiver for Kenny Cooper, who is the three-year starting point guard in Lipscomb. He is on campus and practicing. He is transferred to the school. They are still waiting for the ruling of that waiver. If he is ruled eligible to play this year, this team has the capability of being one of the better ones they've had in a long, long time. If the waiver is not approved and he has to sit out this year, then they will be playing with a couple of kids who probably aren't point guards, and one who is a true freshman from Chattanooga. Rawls is a talented kid, but he's only 17. He really should be a high school senior. He reclassified, graduated early. He played well, though, against Austin Peay. But that would be sort of a question mark on this team, and I'm sure it would get better as the season progressed, but still not many championships and deep tournament runs are made by teams that do not have a good point guard, and Cooper is just that. So I don't think this is going to drag out much longer. I think a decision will be made. Lipscomb has not helped at all in this process. In fact, they've held it up, but they can only do that for so much longer. They had a window, I think it was 10 days, about a week ago, where they finally had to do what they are called upon to do by the NCAA to help in the process. So they are running out of time, and that will at least, I think, get us to a decision here in the next, I don't think it's going to happen prior to December, but maybe by December 1 or whatever, maybe we'll know if Cooper is here or if Cooper will have to sit out again.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you. Do you think that would be ready by the Louisville game, which is November 29th? Do you feel like this Hilltoppers team can stay undefeated up until that Louisville matchup on the 29th?
It just depends upon, I think they're going to beat Eastern Kentucky. That's a game on the road Friday. They have Campbellsville the following Monday. So I fully anticipate they'll be 4-0 going into the Virgin Islands tournament. They'll be favored in their first game against Bowling Green. The second game, they would play either Cincinnati or Illinois State. They would be favored to win against Illinois State. They would be an underdog against Cincinnati. So that is certainly one team that would be favored to beat the Hilltoppers, and I could see them going into the game against Louisville with no more than one loss.
All right, Randy Lee, the voice of the Hilltoppers, joining us here on Heartland Sports Live. Randy, it's always good talking to you. I know that everybody was all smiles with that big victory on Saturday, and hopefully the Hilltoppers can pick up one more to at least solidify a bowl game come December.
That would be great. And just one more note, the WKU women's volleyball team wrapped up a sweep this weekend. They won in North Texas, and they had the monumental showdown with number 17 Rice on Sunday. WKU went in at number 22 in the nation with one loss on the year. Rice was ranked 17th with one loss on the year. WKU won that match in 5 games, so they've now increased their record for the year to 26-1. They have the most wins in the nation. They have the longest winning streak in the nation at 23 straight, and they have 2 more regular season games to play. Thursday's their next one against Louisiana Tech at home. So it looks as if they win the next 2, it'll be the most successful regular season in the history of a program that has, over the last decade, been a top 25 or top 30 program year in and year out. And this was not anticipated. This is a very young team. They thought they would be good, but they were picked 3rd in the conference. And it looks as if they do what they've been doing, they will win the conference and complete a season with only 1 loss.
Man, they're already setting the expectations high that they're that young already.
Yes, they certainly are. If they can, next year they return virtually the entire team. So yes, it is quite. It's been a great program, and this has been one of the storybook seasons.
Randy Lee joining us here on Heartland Sports Live. Randy, good talking to you, and we'll catch up to you again real soon.
Thank you, Trevor. Appreciate it.
And that'll do it for this edition of Heartland Sports Live. Trevor Rice with you every Monday, 5 until 6. I want to thank Ryan Lemon and Randy Lee right there for joining us on today's show. You can go onto the Apple Podcast link on my Twitter account at Radio Trevor Rice to go and download the show. We'll get it uploaded either tomorrow or Wednesday. Until then, have a fantastic sports week. We'll come back and talk more sports, local sports, next Monday, 5 until 6. Heartland Sports Live, ESPN Radio.